Good morning, everybody. This morning I'm at Zapata County AgriLife Extension office, and also this whole building, Zapata County Courthouse in Zapata, Texas, which is located about an hour drive to the south along Highway 83 from Laredo, Texas. I came here today to give a presentation to Region M Water Planning Group, which will take place probably in an hour and a half and 2 hours, we'll see. But I'm here to talk to you and introduce to you one of our county extension agents here in Zapata, Jesse Rodriguez. Jesse and I met before briefly in his later career. He will talk about that later on. So I want to introduce you to Jesse, and then what we're going to talk about briefly is what county extension agent does. So as you may have known, that Texas has 254 counties, which is the largest state with the largest probably number of counties in the nation. And we have so many county agents, extension agents, specializing in special programs. Main purpose of those programs is to deliver education and outreach to rural Texas, to cover rural Texas mostly, and they also do cities and municipalities as well. So without further ado, I'll introduce Jesse, and he's going to give us briefly who he is and what he did, his experience, and then now he started extension probably in December last year.
Yeah, about 6 months.
In this role, about 6 months. So we'll talk about that. So Jesse, take over.
Thank you for having me. I'm the County Agriculture and Natural Resources Agent here in Zapata. What that means is I provide educational resources for anybody that is in production agriculture. So whether it be livestock, crop production, even horticulture, backyard gardens, that kind of thing. My background is in livestock, mainly cattle. But we do have extension specialists all over the state that can help us with any problem that you might have. So anybody in the county of Zapata or surrounding counties that has any questions or issues with livestock, with their fruit gardens, or backyard gardens, or commercial crop production, can call us. We can get answers for them. We can get them help. Also provide them with resources, educational resources, so that they can better their business or whatever it is that they may be doing. We also do a little bit of education on water, wastewater. My background is in wastewater treatment, on-site wastewater treatment, so septic systems. I did a lot of work with that before. So if you have private water wells, if you have septic systems, we can get you that educational resources that you may need to better understand your septic system, how it works, what can go wrong, how to fix problems, how to diagnose problems, those kind of things. We also do 4-H and youth development. So all of our 4-H programs for the youth here in Zapata. Here in Zapata, it's mainly livestock, but there are all sorts of other projects that the youth can participate in, from archery, shooting sports, food and nutrition programs. There's also leadership programs available. Here in our office in Zapata, we also have a separate agent that does our Healthy South Texas initiative. That deals more with health programs focused on improving the lives of the community. So we do a lot of diabetes education, nutrition education, that kind of thing.
All right, Jesse, one of the questions is, I put even on the Facebook Live title, is what county extension agent does. And can you tell us, since you've gone through that process, applied for a job, you've gone through that process, can you give us a little bit what people should do, or what if there are young people or there are recent graduates who wanted to become extension agent just like yourself, and what should they do? Does experience matter, or what are the main qualities that organization looks into hiring someone?
Okay.
So since you've gone through the program briefly, can you tell the audience that?
Sure. Well, they definitely are looking for people that have background in agriculture. It doesn't really matter what specific area, but you do have to have a little bit of background knowledge, a degree, bachelor's degree in agricultural education, animal science, something like that would be very beneficial. It's not required. A bachelor's degree is required, but the specific subject area is not required. One of the things with extension, especially if you're going to go into a small county, you're going to want to be somebody that's self-motivated, somebody that is not afraid to go out and meet people and get those contacts, because everything with extension is going out and making those contacts. You need to know who is involved in agriculture, in production, out in your community, and you have to get those people to buy into your program. So if you're somebody that just wants to sit in the office and wait for the phone to ring, this job's not going to work for you. A lot of counties are one-agent counties, so you're stuck in the office by yourself. So nobody's going to tell you, hey, this is what you need to do. You've got to figure it out, and you've got to go out there and get the job done.
All right. You mentioned agriculture. Since you are agriculture and natural resources extension agent, what are the primary agricultural crops grown in your county? And tell us about agriculture in this county. And then we'll talk about cattle separately, because I want to hear that story that you told me, but we're going to get to that next.
Okay. Here in Zapata County, since we do not get a lot of rainfall, we depend most of our water from the Rio Grande River. There's not a whole lot of crop production. There is some sorghum being grown in the county right now. Depending on the year and how much rainfall we've had, sometimes we'll grow onions in the area, but mostly it's going to be sorghum, and if that. Some years there is no crop production. Other than that, the major ag commodity in Zapata County is beef cattle and wildlife. Hunting is real big in all of Texas, but particularly in South Texas. So we do have a lot of landowners that choose just to have hunting operations.
I'd say, yeah, you mentioned the Rio Grande. Rio Grande actually flows through here, and I posted some of the videos and pictures yesterday about Falcon Reservoir, which stretched from this county all the way to Starr County. It's the largest reservoir, but because of water shortages nowadays, as the reservoir conservation capacity is very low. And then along the way, yesterday I was driving through, I saw some sorghum fields that I snapped some pictures and posted that too. And then you said those might be the only ones that cultivated agriculture sorghum that you might have.
Yes, that's the only one.
That's the only one. Let's talk about a cattle business. Start off, I guess, with cow tick, Mexican cow tick problem that's very specific to your county. Tell us about that. It was a really interesting story.
Well, the Texas cattle fever is a problem that's persisted in the U.S. for over 100 years. It's the actual disease has been eradicated in the U.S. The tick that transmits the disease has not been eradicated entirely in the U.S. So it's a problem in Mexico. So with us being along the border, we do have a lot of livestock, wildlife, particularly that crosses the river, and they carry that tick. So the issue is we want to make sure that we are not taking those ticks from here in areas in South Texas further up into Texas or other parts of the U.S. where we might expose cattle that have never had exposure to this fever. So we have a tick eradication program. It basically runs along the river. We have a permanent quarantine zone where cattle and livestock have to be checked before they're transported in and out of the quarantine zone. So we have federal inspectors that come in. They check the cattle for ticks, and then they dip them to remove any parasites.
Dipping, you mean, wash the cow with some sort of chemical?
Yes.
Liquid?
Yes, ivermectin. They have dipping vats, so large dipping vats, basically a swimming pool. They run the cattle through a chute. They jump into the the dip, and then they come out, and then they're allowed to dry before they're moved out. If they do the inspection on site, like on your ranch, they'll bring in sprayers, and once they check all the cattle, they'll spray them down, and then once they're dried, then you're allowed to move them.
So it's safe for cows that they go through that dip, the liquid. It's
Right.
safe for them that doesn't infect
Yes.
their
No,
intestines.
it's safe for them. There is a withdrawal period for slaughter, but it's, most of these cattle are being sent to market and are not going to be slaughtered right away, especially calves that are going to be fed. Excuse me. Horses have to be also have to be inspected. So those are being moved off of properties to go work on another ranch, or people take them to roping events or any horse events. Those, if you move them from the permanent zone, once they're inspected, they'll give you a pass, and so you have so many days to go out and do whatever you need to do before you have to bring it back.
So how frequently they have to be inspected?
If you're in the permanent quarantine zone and you have cattle, or if you are in an area that has been quarantined because they found the tick on your property or on your cattle, then it's a 2-week rotation. So they call it scratch and dip, which basically means they run them through, check them for ticks, and then they dip them or spray them. So you scratch and dip every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks you have to round up your cattle. They have to be inspected. If everything's okay, they release them, and you can sell them or leave them there. So when we're talking about how the wildlife has become a big thing here, is a lot of ranchers that are in the permanent quarantine zone. It's not cost effective to run cattle because of the work and labor and all that's involved. So they choose just to have wildlife. So they manage for deer or different exotic wildlife that then they sell hunts to.
Well, we're gonna switch the gears about irrigation and programming mostly. As we know, extension program specialists or extension agents particularly, they have their own planning committees within the county. Let's say we also call them stakeholders sometimes. So then, and then each extension agent develops his or her own program for a year. Right. And then the extension, also the Texas is divided up by regions, and then the regional programming meetings also take place. That's where you take your local programming and then debate and discuss and then get it approved. Tell us about how that process goes through, even though you're probably 6 months into the program. I guess you're trying to figure out the learning process still, but as a new agent, how long do they give you some time to get familiarized with the county before you develop your own program, or they say, well, you need to develop your outreach program right away and show us what you were working on?
You do get a little bit of leeway on that. For some agents, I was lucky enough to come back to my hometown. For some agents, they're stuck in a county, or they're sent to a county that they're not familiar with. Some agents, they move to that county the day they start working. So you do have to familiarize yourself with the county, with what the commodities are, what type of ag production is going on in your county, because you want to focus your programs on those areas. We don't do any marine stuff in Zapata County because there's no need for it. So all of our programming basically focuses around cattle, beef cattle, and wildlife, because those are our two major sectors of ag production in here. So what I talked about earlier about going out and meeting these people is that's the big part of it. You have to go out and make those contacts and get those people to tell you what they need. Because you can as a county agent, you can sit down and come up with any program you want, but if it doesn't fit the needs of your community, it does you no good. So part of program planning is you have to set up your committees. So you get these stakeholders, elected officials, people that are in production, just civic leaders. You get them in, and then you ask them to tell you what they want from your program. So once they give you an idea of, hey, this is what we need to focus on, then you can turn around and start planning your programs and getting your things going, so that it's your idea, but it's really the community's idea. And I think you have more buy-in that way because it comes from them. They're telling you what they want.
Right. Let's shift to water. Water is obviously the biggest challenge, biggest problem because of the drought, and then the way the Rio Grande is very unpredictable and all that. And this area, especially South Texas area, from probably Fort Quitman all the way to Gulf of Mexico, is there's a plenty of brackish water. By brackish, we mean groundwater that has highest salinity, salt concentrations that is not acceptable for drinking. I think they run from at least 1,100 to probably 2,000, 3,000 ppm, parts per million as a concentration, but up to perhaps crops can take up to 700 depending on the type of crops, and vegetables usually 500 parts per million perhaps will be tolerant enough to use that water. Now, you also mentioned yesterday when we talked was about the livestock, water for livestock. According to Texas water law, livestock is exempt from water permitting. You don't have to have water permit to water your livestock in Texas. So, and then you mentioned about cattle ranchers. I saw some of the ranches along the way when I drove to Falcon Reservoir to Roma, about 30 minutes through the south from here. And you mentioned that they are using that brackish water. They have groundwater wells they're using for cows they are drinking. So tell us about that a little bit. How, is there any ways they divert surface water to irrigate, to supply water to their livestock, like Rio Grande water, treated water maybe, tap water?
Yes.
Or just they have a well, they just give them that? Just tell us about that.
In Zapata County, unfortunately, the only source of fresh water comes from the Rio Grande River. So all of our communities, Zapata being the main community, we have a few smaller communities. They all use water from the Rio Grande. There are a lot of special utility districts in the area that supply water to the ranches, but they're also getting their water from the river. Some people do have livestock water wells. The water is very salty. The cattle do drink it. They probably do not prefer it, but when that's the only source of water, then, and they're thirsty enough, they're going to drink it. Most ranchers have stock tanks, so we depend on rainfall. So, right now
you collect the rainwater basically.
Exactly. Right now, most ranchers are facing issue if you do not have public access to water or public water. You're depending on your stock tanks, and when it doesn't rain, those levels go down pretty fast. So majority, I would say, the majority of our livestock producers depend on stock tank rainwater for their cattle. Just because water wells are, some of them you have to drill pretty deep to get to the water, and then you end up having very salty water.
Yeah, I guess another fact is that for diverting surface water, it's high evaporation rates.
Very
the
high.
Temperatures yesterday was 110. You can notice some of the spots here, sunglass spots. So I stood outside probably after about 20 minutes, I got burned. So it's 110 Fahrenheit, not Celsius. And then I guess that the evaporation always exceeds precipitation down here. So that's, you mentioned the tank. I think that's another way of storing the water, so that keeping it from being evaporated and saving it for. Well, I guess let's talk about, we covered agriculture and water and cattle and all of it in your county. Let's talk about your previous experience. Let's talk about on-site wastewater treatment. How does it, you are an expert in this field. We met at Jesse and I and Ryan Gerlich, our program specialist in College Station Bioag Engineering Department. We met while we were restoring that our on-site wastewater treatment training facility in Rellis campus in Texas A&M. And Jesse was the county DR, designated representative for the on-site wastewater. So, based on your Brazos County experience, tell us about the differences here. Does this county also issue septic permits, or how does it work? I noticed that it's a big county, but then everything's sporadic.
Right. We do issue county septic system permits. It's probably not as widespread or as intense, I would say, as it is in Brazos County. Brazos County is more of I would say, rural urban county, where you do have that huge city of Bryan College Station, and then you have a lot of small rural areas outside of it. Zapata is more of a rural throughout. The population is concentrated in the town site of Zapata, as opposed to areas like Bryan College Station, where a lot of people, they'll own property outside of town and they'll have a house. A lot of people don't do that around here. Everybody kind of lives in town. We do have a few people that have houses out on their ranches, and those do have septic systems, but it's not concentrated like it is in other areas of Texas, where you have entire subdivisions that have a septic system on each house. There's some areas of East Texas where you have $500,000 million homes on septic systems. So a lot of people think of septic systems, they think of the old, the old cartoons where you have an outhouse behind the old house on 50 acres, and that's not really the case. Septic systems are very sophisticated now. They have great technology to treat that water. Some of these systems treat the water well enough to where you can dispose of it on the surface. You can spray it onto your lawn. So with that comes a lot of problems. The maintenance, the mechanical parts that can break. So although they are more sophisticated systems, and the technology is way better than the old pipe and gravel systems, they can cause a lot more problems, because people just assume that, hey, I saw it spraying, it's working fine, and you possibly could be spraying raw sewage onto your barbecue pit or your playground set or straight into your swimming pool. And with these subdivisions, you're talking about houses that are most counties have a 1 acre minimum for having a septic system. But when you have a huge house and a big garage and maybe a set of pens or stable for your horse, you're reducing the area, and then a swimming pool, you're reducing the area where you can place the septic system. And what ends up happening is the neighbors got the same setup, and so your septic systems are right on top of each other. And one of them starts having problems, the next one starts having problems, and all of a sudden you're having a big problem. And then you're getting runoff that's going into the ditch. Eventually it ends up back into our drinking water. So it is a modern problem, and is a problem that has to be addressed. So luckily we have DRs, designated representatives. Those are licensed inspectors through the TCEQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, that do inspect these systems. They permit them. They review the plans before the septic system's installed. The Extension Service does offer a lot of education and training on homeowner use. We do have even here in our office, we have handouts, and we can give you some information when you're selecting a septic system, what works best. There's different types of systems that work best in different types of soil, if you have sandy soil or more clay soil. So we can provide you those resources so you can be better informed when you do purchase your septic system.
All right. Well, sounds good. The last, I guess, the topic perhaps that oil prices are going up now. Eagle Shale, most of the South Texas that covers that. A lot of people are familiar with the fracking, extracting the oil and gas from the ground by pushing high pressurized liquids and breaking the shales, the bottom, and then pulling it. So now, because of oil, I notice at the hotel too, a lot of rig operators now. They used to kind of thin out because of the oil prices went down. A lot of the rigs were closed or permanently left. Now they are restoring, they're coming back. So in Zapata County, how much of the oil or fracking happens here, or is there any this carbohydrate-related business in your county that you are aware of?
Yeah, the Eagle Ford Shale doesn't really extend into Zapata County. The majority of our production has been natural gas.
Okay.
And for a few years back, maybe 15, 20 years ago, Zapata County was one of the leading natural gas producers in the country. There's natural gas wells, everywhere in this county. We've got some natural gas wells in town behind the high school, or the old high school. That kind of died off when natural gas prices kind of bottomed out. That was kind of the start of the Eagle Ford, the oil boom. There's still some production here. A lot of it is pass through, where people are going to other areas. Natural gas production hasn't seen that bounce back that we've seen in oil. But there's a couple of oil wells, not real big around here. But the natural gas is buried real deep here. So they were having to drill wells, 20, 30,000 feet down.
Wow.
So they have done some fracking. There are some injection wells here where, so they dispose of the fracking materials and things like that. I don't know what the environmental impact that's going to have. I don't think that's been studied. It hasn't been done long enough to know yet what impact that'll have on the environment or our drinking water.
Right.
But, again, we're going back to the water being very salty. You're injecting all this brine back into the ground. So,
if you want to treat it tomorrow, then that's going to exacerbate your problems with the water treatment planning and all that.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's wonderful. Any thoughts, any other that you want to add that we missed probably in your county? You are local, you grew up here, right?
Right.
And then you went to A&M, you did your undergraduate and master's degree, and then you became DR in Brazos County.
Right.
For tell us about that.
Well, I graduated from Zapata High School in 2000. I went to A&M and stayed there. I was there till December of 2017. The opportunity came to move back. It was just the right time. So I'm back here. I'm enjoying it. I was a little afraid moving back from a city where you had everything at your fingertips at any hour of the day or night to a town that sometimes shuts down at 9 o'clock. But it's been great. The people are great. Everybody's been real helpful. Like I said, in this job, you do have to go out there and meet those people. I was lucky enough to already know a lot of these people, so it's made the transition a lot easier. But if you're in Zapata County and you need anything from our office, please come by. We're in the courthouse, second floor. Give us a call. Find us on Facebook. If you're not in Zapata County and you have questions that you think we might be able to help you with, definitely look us up. Give us a call. We'll be happy to help you or point you in the right direction. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Jesse. We appreciate it. We wish you the best of the luck.
Thank you.
And then we'll later on continue with the presentation. If we can set it up for live, we will do that. And then we talked about septic systems, and I'll follow up with that with Ryan Gerlich, and I'll introduce you some technologies, wastewater treatment technologies in College Station that they've set it up. Dr. Jantrenia and Dr. Munster, they are teaching undergraduate classes this summer. I'll do that hopefully this week, later on this week. So that would conclude our discussion. I guess this was very useful. I learned a lot. Each county varies, and everywhere we go, it's total different. I think we covered everything here. So again, thanks so much, Jesse, for hosting us, hosting me actually, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I'm gonna turn off the light.